So after I put together this deck, I realized just how absurd it was from like an MTG lore perspective. I decided that I was going to make a different kind of intro for it to reflect that absurdity. It was about 4 minutes worth of footage, which is way too much, but I'm stubborn, so here's a little bit of it anyway. So we don't need to see the rest of that. Here is Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil is a WUBRG legendary god bard. It's a 4/4 with, as long as there are 4 or more counters among sagas you control, Tom Bombadil has hexproof and indestructible. And whenever the final chapter of a saga you control resolves, reveal cards from your library until you find a saga and put it onto the battlefield. With the release of March of the Machines, we got a very cool cycle of Praetors that all have activated abilities that transform them into sagas, which let us repeatedly trigger Tom Bombadil as they resolve. On top of this, they're really powerful sagas. With Elishnorn, you'll make a bunch of attacking tokens and make use of a one-sided board wipe. Urabrask gives you Dork Destruction, Ramp, and a cast of Past in Flames. With Jin-Gitaxias, you'll get to draw a bunch of cards, use another one-sided board clear, and you get an Omniscience for all of the cards in your hand. With Vorinclex, you'll cheat in big creatures, pump them, and have them fight all your opponents. And with Sheldred, you'll get removal, hand disruption, and mass reanimation. With the exception of Vorinclex, which is quite costly to activate, they each have conditions that must be met in order to activate them. So we'll have to build our deck in such a way to accommodate this. So I picked what I thought were the 12 best sagas for us to, I guess, command a cascade into, but sagas have like a massive wall of text on them, so I won't go into all of them in detail, but it's a good point to mention that the deck list is in the comments. You can check it out and you can read all of the modes on each of those sagas, in depth with all of that. There's actually a 13th saga, which is Urza's Saga. There's some pretty cool things you can do with saga in this deck, so it'll make sense as to why that's in there once we get a little deeper into the video. But one of the consistent abilities that all of our sagas do is they give us either cheating big creatures into play or reanimating from the graveyard, or even mass reanimation. So that's, I guess, the big theme. The other one is, I guess, the removal. There's lots of really good unconditional removal or really powerful removal stapled onto a lot of sagas. Lastly, I think the only other thing is probably just a bit of a sub-theme of tokens, which is why we've got things like Mondrak in the list. And it fits nicely into the overall build approach, which is Phyrexian Tribal. We've included each of the Praetors except for one of the Vorinclex cards, and this is due to it being problematic with sagas and doubling their counters. In its place, we have both of the Atraxas and Mondrak. It's important to note that some printings of OG Atraxa don't actually have her listed as a Phyrexian. This has been errated, so you can definitely cast her uncounterably with Cavern of Souls 2. This cycle of cards is amongst the most feared and powerful cards in all of Magic the Gathering, but thanks to the new cycle of Praetors, we can see Tom being firmly on Team Phyrexia. So we have a bunch of high mana value enchantments and high mana value creatures, and the only way this is going to work as a deck is if we pump it full of land ramp and removal for our instants and sorceries. Explore, Farseek, Into the North, Nature's Law, Rampant Growth, 3 Visits, Growth Spiral, Joint Exploration, Cultivate, and Kadama's Reach are all basically copies of the same spell. And joining this, we have Sol Ring, Amulet of Vigor, and Expedition Map, all of which of these are tutorable with Urza's Saga. The Amulet is sick when most of our ramp spells have our lands enter tapped, and the Expedition Map, plus Crop Rotation and Sylvan Scrying, lets us search for specific lands which we'll definitely want given that we're in 5 colors. Arcane Signet is a great rock given that it ramps for 2 and taps for WUBRG. Rounding out the ramp package at the top end, we have Urza's Incubator and Chromatic Lantern, Here's Whim, Tempt with Discovery, Hour of Promise, and Titania's Command. These large mana value spells let us get specific lands of our liking. If our colors are fixed, we can get utility and vice versa. There are a few cards that actually sit between the spot of removal and ramp. We can use Death Sprout as both removal and ramp, and we can use Settle the Wreckage to protect ourselves from a beating or to save a mate even. The bonus mode is where we can use it on our own tokens to get extra basics if we're feeling particularly spicy. Geomancer's Gambit and Cleansing Wildfire can be cast on our Flagstones of Drakir or Cascading Cataracts to go up 1 land, or we can use either of those spells on one of our opponent's best lands, like Guy's Cradle,
Say the line, Bart!
or Reliquary Tower. We've got the best single target removal in the game: Fatal Push, Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshares, Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy, and D-Spark, all of which at instant speed. Anger of the Gods, Fiery Confluence, Cyclonic Rift, and Delayed Blast Fireball also join the other previously mentioned one-sided board wipes or partial board wipes. Overall, the removal package is very strong, and none of our sweepers will ever destroy our creatures on its own, as each of ours have 4 toughness or greater. There's only one other artifact in the list, which is another Urza's Saga target, and that is Hot Soup, because what's a journey up a mountain to throw a ring into a pit of lava with your best oily mates if you don't have some good food to go with it along the way. If you want to put something better in there, put Shadow Spear in the deck. It does all of the same things, it's a better card, but you know, it's your life. I'm not even your real dad. Urborg and Cabal Coffers are a 2-card combo that we can fetch from Titania's command, Tempt with Discovery or Hour of Promise. Cascading Cataracts gives us an indestructible land and a colour filter for our commander. Cavern of Souls makes all of our creatures uncounterable. Hall of Heliod's Generosity is for recycling sagas. Khan's Bastion is a spell in a land slot. Proliferating Sagas triggers for the next chapter ability, which is a cool way to remove problematic things at instant speed, or to flip over a Phyrexian Saga to protect it from removal. The same can be done with Atraxa at your end step. Mirex, Castle Ardenvale, and Field of the Dead all let us make blockers, which can be doubled with Mondrak. And lastly, Yavimaya, the World Tree, and all of our other lands give us color access, rounding out the mana base. We avoided fetches, jewels, and shocks for this deck, opting for more rainbow lands and triomes for additional color fixing. So that pretty well rounds out the list to give you a good overview of all of the includes for the deck. We really want to just be ramping and ramping until we can cascade with our commander into one of those big enchantments to start accruing value over and over again. One of the cooler things we can do with Urza's Saga is to cast it, to play it and have it on chapter 2 when we cast our commander. That way, at the first main phase of our next turn, we'll automatically get a cascade trigger from Tom Bombadil. So really cool sort of thing with that, but don't get too hung up on that. It's a Wooburg deck and our commander's Wooburg, so playing a colorless land makes that hard to do on curve. One of the best things I think with a deck like this is that it is extremely non-linear in how you deploy the deck. You know, you'll find a huge variety of different ways that this is going to sort of play out, and it's, you know, pushing all of the Praetors onto the battlefield. You know, even the Ola ones with all of the punishing effects. You know, that's going to have a totally different gameplay to just have something like, you know, all of your ramp spells into all of the removal-based enchantments and things like that. So I like putting decks like this together. It's really good in terms of having, you know, those broad game states. It's the perfect kind of deck to hand to someone to play if they're looking for just a new and different experience from Commander. You know, something like this will be quite, you know, broad in its appeal. Thanks so much for staying with us all the way through to the end, and I'll see you for the next one.